Welcome back to another episode of the Victory Over Vices podcast, brought to you commercial free by addictionhelp.com. I am your host, Dan Hauser, and on this episode, we're going to change things up a little bit. We have spent a lot of time so far in the Victory Over Vices podcast talking about athletes and everything they go through, both physically and mentally, in order to perform at a high level. We've had some fantastic conversations with some truly amazing and knowledgeable guests, including Dr. Natalie Clagg and Dr. Joshua Norman from The Ohio State University, Dr. Harlan Austin from Premier Sports Psychology, and a slew of others who have been kind enough to come on with us and have some great conversations. And while we have had truly fantastic conversations in order to try and get into the mind of those athletes and understand everything when it comes to both their victories and their vices, we haven't sat down with an athlete yet and got an inside look firsthand from them, and that changes today. And so when we come back, I will be joined by Cre Finfrock. He is a former professional baseball player and pitcher for the Toronto Blue Jays. So let's get right into that sit down. All right, welcome back to the show, everyone. As I teased earlier, today I am joined by Cre Finfrock. Cre is a former professional baseball player and pitcher with the Blue Jays organization. So, Cre, thanks for coming in and sitting down with me. First in-studio interview of the show, so this is pretty cool.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So, right off the bat, if you just kind of want to tell the audience a little bit about kind of your story, your history of coming up in sports, and kind of your whole little background of that, and then we'll get into the meat of it.
Yeah, so pretty much, long story short, obviously started off with just your normal little league. Played just any sport I could get. My parents allowed me to sign up for soccer, football, racing dirt bikes, anything you can kind of imagine. I did. Going into high school, I played baseball, did wrestling, and then obviously once baseball started kind of progressing, I really focused in and dialed in on baseball. Got a scholarship to go to UCF, went to UCF for 4 years, got drafted by the Blue Jays and played in their organization from 2018 to 2022. Here I am.
All right, so let's just kind of start from the beginning and then work our way through. So at what point during your early days of baseball, at what point did you realize that this could be more than just kind of a hobby I play on the weekends? At what point did it kind of click that you could actually turn this into a career?
Yeah, I guess the point that really made me realize, I can do this for potentially a living and really kind of just more than just a hobby, like you said. I'd probably say sophomore, junior year of high school. I started having some colleges kind of get some interest in me. And then I was lucky enough to have some professional scouts at that point coming to my games. And at that point, I really kind of opened my eyes to what it could be. So yeah, I guess sophomore, junior year of high school.
All right, so sticking to high school, and then even when we get into college here for a little bit. So when you reach that level where you're like, okay, I can do this for real now, did you start kind of ramping up your training at that point, or what did your training start looking like as you started to progress further and further?
Honestly, in high school, nothing really changed as far as my everyday basis. I kind of just showed up at the field with my friends. At that point, it was just more for fun. Like I said, nothing really changed at that point. But obviously, once I went to college, then training really kind of becomes more of a structured kind of thing where you're talking and you have access to more resources and you have everybody that's kind of there for you to push you.
So what did an average day look like for you when it came to training and getting ready for games in high school compared to college, and then obviously compared to pro?
Of course, yeah. So in high school, the typical day would be obviously going to school all day. After school, we'd go grab a quick bite to eat, go back to the field, do a quick little warm up stretch, couple throws, and then it was game time. Nothing really went into it other than just kind of showing up for it. Versus college, depending on if it was a home or away game. For a home game, you'd have either classes that day, or if it was the weekend, you kind of wake up, have the full day to prepare, show up to the field, have an early practice, have your trainer kind of give you any kind of treatment you need, whether it's like a rehab, any kind of thing to prepare your body for that game. versus an away game. We're obviously at the field pretty much once you wake up, you're at the field all day, kind of the same thing. Resources are all there. And then leading into pro ball, that's obviously where really things really kind of ramp up. You wake up and that's your only goal and your only thing that's really drawing your attention. So you kind of wake up, go to the field. We sometimes have a little bit of an early practice, have some a BP for the hitters. For pitchers, we do a quick little throw, go inside, do our lifts, whatever is needed for that day. Kind of lounge around, prepare our bodies, and game time. It's a lot more obviously individualized in pro ball versus college.
So, once you hit high school and then into college, even too, I mean, you're at that point, like you mentioned, starting your sophomore year, you're not just a baseball player at that point, but you're a pretty good one. And so I would have to imagine at some point, whether it was that year, your sophomore year, junior, senior, whatever, at some point, a transition, I would imagine, had to have happened as far as like you go from just being like a regular high school kid or whatever to like, okay, now I'm a baseball player. And so, how did you kind of once that transition started to take shape more, how did you balance being a top prospect in baseball with also just being like a regular kid and a teenager?
So for me, it was never really kind of a balance. It's more, I'm a pretty lighthearted guy, kind of go with the flow. I never really changed what I did as far as kind of like what I needed to do at the field. Is more just I treated this just as a game, kind of just try to have as much fun as I could. Yes, I mean, I didn't really do anything drastic where I would just flip a switch and be a completely different person. I tried to be the same person on and off the field.
Did you notice as you got older though that other teammates of yours or other players around you were kind of almost like giving up being just like a regular kid and they were just like literally just focusing like almost 100% or as much as they could just on baseball and they were kind of just ignoring everything else with it? Or
yeah, of course. I mean, obviously there's guys, each person has their own way of dealing with their sport and how they want to handle themselves. Yeah, I mean, like you said, each person, they might have a kind of like a switch they turn on and off, whether it's at the field, on the field, whether they might just focus solely on baseball or whatever sport they might be playing. But for me specifically, I just kept everything kind of level headed, try to keep as much together because I feel like once you start having kind of drastic changes, it's kind of you take things away from the field versus into the field. It's for me personally, it's just best for me just to kind of stay level headed.
so off the field, was your social circle pretty normal as far as like your average social circle goes, or was it mostly just like your teammates?
So in high school, obviously, I had just the normal. I had
Yeah.
I was friends with everybody as much as I could be. And then obviously, once you get into college, you don't have as much of a freedom to do what you want. It's more of like a regimented schedule. So at that point, it was more obviously teammates were my friends. We didn't have any time to really go out to the bars or really kind of live a normal college experience. Is more when you're not at the field, you're in class, vice versa.
So, and then also you met your now wife when you were younger too. Did you guys meet in high school or college? When did you guys meet?
We met in high school,
High school, okay.
and we started dating like the second or third week when I was up in college in
Okay.
June.
So what? So
Or
now
July, I'm sorry.
so now you kind of throw that dynamic in too. So now it's like you're off in college now, so you obviously have more responsibilities when it comes to baseball and your training and whatnot. You obviously are now also trying to get acclimated to being in college with classes and everything and your friends, and then now you also have a new relationship. So what was it like now balancing that also now and with along with everything else?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, she was just obviously supportive from day one. She was obviously my biggest fan in baseball. Definitely, she dove right into the baseball world and really kind of picked it up and was able to kind of help me learn as I mean things I didn't see she might have seen. But yeah, it was good. Like the dynamic of us was really good. We never struggled with off the field or on the field kind of things. It was always just having fun.
So you just mentioned when you were in high school, it didn't really get to a point where you weren't able to also just kind of do your normal high school stuff. College, it got a little bit different. So I guess we'll focus specifically on college with this question. Was there ever a point while you were in college where you kind of just looked around everyone else and whether they were going out to the bars on Friday nights or they were doing this or doing that or whatever, and just looked at yourself and said, do I really want to keep doing this? Or was there ever a point where you just said, I could just give this all up and just go be a normal guy, like when you were in college? Or was that never really something that you thought about?
As far as giving up baseball, is never thought, but as far as maybe wishing I could also live a normal life as well as baseball, of course. Obviously everybody wants to experience the college experience. Going out having fun, going to like fraternity parties, sorority parties, etc. But obviously being in a relationship and being in baseball, that was a priority to me. So it wasn't ever a serious thought, but I never, like I said, never thought about stepping away from baseball.
So you go to UCF, you're there on a scholarship. What were kind of some of those early days at UCF like, as you were kind of feeling, like I mentioned, you were feeling out not just the college experience, but also now you've got a whole new set of coaches, you've got new teammates, you've got new expectations, new responsibilities. What was that like kind of early on, kind of navigating all that?
Yeah, as a freshman, obviously, you're walking into the locker room not really knowing what to expect, especially coming from high school. Classes are way different. Balancing that school versus baseball life, it's completely different. Teammates wise, everybody, from my experience, everybody was great. We walked in, like I said, they all had open arms. It was a pretty easy process. My girlfriend at the time, wife now, she had already been in college for a year, and so she kind of already was able to kind of help me out as far as navigating classes and really kind of just easing me into the college experience. Versus the teammates and everybody's on the field wise was supportive. Coaches, same way.
You know, I'm sure you butt heads with coaches when you're in high school too, but that dynamic's different because for the most part, like your high school coaches are also teachers, like at the school. So like now you get to college, those coaches that's their only job. They are paid to just be coaches 100% of the time. Did you ever find yourself? I don't know if the right word is butting heads with, but did you ever find yourself kind of growing frustrated with some of your coaches just because? And it may not have been anything that anyone did, but because that dynamic changes and you're kind of learning on the fly, that dynamic change, were there ever times where it was just like, man, what is this guy's problem? Or man, like, why is he riding me so hard? I mean, was that a common thing at all? Or?
Oh, of course. I mean, obviously everybody wants to perform at their highest level. You're going to butt heads with teammates, coaches, you name it, it's just kind of the name of the game. Just at that point, you just have to kind of get over your differences and, just really just at the end of the day, he's your coach. He's your superior. You got to listen to them. So like you said, it's always you're gonna butt heads. You're gonna have issues, but at the end of the day, that it's.
So what would you typically do in that spot then to kind of keep yourself almost like mentally grounded to the point where you don't fly off the handles too much, but you also like don't let it affect your play either. So like what do you do in that spot to kind of keep yourself like so it doesn't affect you kind of on field wise, performance wise?
Well, obviously when it comes down to like a disagreement with a coach, you just keep your mouth shut. If you kind of step on their toes in front of everybody else, there's going to be an issue. And the way we kind of did it, or the way my coach would always do it, it'd be more of like a team punishment versus like an individual. So I would never want any of my teammates to kind of suffer from something that I would have done. So I just always, just kept my mouth shut, kept my head down, and just did what I did best. And me being a perfectionist, I would just really work on my craft and kind of do what I could.
So you suffered a pretty big arm injury, right? When you were UCF, shoulder, was it shoulder, arm, shoulder? Yeah. So was that your first like real significant injury when it came to like pitching related stuff?
Yeah, my first really major injury ever.
Okay.
Ended up having they thought it was a slap tear, but ended up tearing pretty much the whole top half of my shoulder, and then some like fraying in the rotator cuff.
And what year was that?
That was my sophomore year.
Okay, so you're what, 19 at the time? 18, 19?
18, 19.
19.
Yeah,
okay, so you're an 18 or 19-year-old kid now. All of a sudden, for the first time in your life, you were not just experienced like an injury related to play, but like obviously a pretty severe and significant one. I guess what was that like? Because of that age, like it's one thing when you're kind of a veteran and you've been around injury, you've maybe experienced yourself, you've seen others, go through it. You kind of as you get older, obviously everyone gets older. Your mind frame kind of changes. So 18, 19-year-old kid, it's your first real significant injury. You're obviously not at home. You're at school. What was that like? And then like what did that do to you mentally, kind of going through all that at that age?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a long story the way kind of everything drew out, but pretty much my entire sophomore year, I pitched with a torn shoulder. Didn't really realize what happened. I passed all like the arm tests. They do all like the push down tests. I'm um, not a doctor or anything like that, but I passed all their tests. Everything seemed to be fine. It just there'd be signs that kind of would point out I lost my velocity for a little bit, came back up, and then my command went, and then I kind of brought it all back down, just not at the level I was used to. So I pitched like that the entire year, just kind of struggles, and it was obviously very frustrating not performing to where I knew I could. This is when obviously my wife came in. She's like, like you're not performing how you should be. Just go get your shoulder checked out, just to mark that off. So obviously I went and got an MRI, and that's when they found the big tear in my labrum, some fraying in the rotator cuff. Ended up having surgery a month after that, and that whole season or that whole year essentially was kind of a wash.
Were you worried that was it at that point? Was there ever any concerns, or you just knew you had to just rehab and get back?
I knew the odds were against me, more so than obviously just like an elbow injury. Obviously, at this point, TJ is just kind of just slap on the wrist. It's not even a big thing. Whereas labrum, shoulder injuries, guys don't typically. I guess I wouldn't say they wouldn't come back, but it's just things, especially how long and drawn out the process was. We weren't too sure how my arm would react with rehab, but I just attacked every day of rehab and really did what I could to go back. And there was no way that I wasn't going to come back. Whether I went to the pros or got drafted like that, that wasn't even in the picture at that point. I just wanted to get back and pitch at UCF.
Were there times during that year that were kind of really like mentally grinding, so to say, like as far as like those days where rehab was just going really bad or it just wasn't progressing the way you wanted? I mean, were there those dark times that you experienced, and how did you kind of get through those dark days to get back to the better ones again during that rehab?
Yeah, so I wouldn't even describe it as like dark days. It was just more of like, it kind of just seemed super repetitive, and I just kept in the back of my mind that what I put into it's what I'm getting out of it. So I just really pushed myself every day, and I'd show up to rehab every single day and ask, what can I do? What can I do more? What can I do extra? It was never, I'm just going to do what is prescribed. I always wanted to do more. And I feel like that's what led me to where I was able to come back stronger than what I went out as.
Did they have you on painkillers at all while you were rehabbing?
So they tried to prescribe me. So I don't remember what the prescription was, but I don't even know what the protocols are with the hospital, but they made me take one in the hospital, maybe twice in the hospital, just to kind of see if I would have any kind of reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
Where I didn't really want to take it then. I thought I didn't have any pain. They just said, well, it's probably because you're still drugged up from the procedure. So I took it, obviously, and I had to. But obviously when I went home, I still didn't have any pain, and I'm not the kind of person that wants to kind of add anything that's not needed. So I just stopped taking it and never took it in, or never took anything else. And I handed in my prescription to my trainer, and they locked it up and never saw it since.
Well, I mean, that's awesome. So obviously you didn't need to take them, but I'm sure there were probably others that your teammates that did for one reason or another. Were there protocols in place within the university to kind of make sure that everyone that did need to take them was taking them responsibly, so to say?
I don't know if necessarily there were protocols. I do know that our trainer had like a lockbox to where if you prescribed something and you weren't necessarily taking it, or I guess I can't answer that. I just know from my experience, I handed them over and just said, I don't need them, take them. I didn't like the side effects, so that when I was able to, or when I had to take them. And like I said, I don't like to add any kind of extra if I don't need it.
Okay, so now we're moving out. So you go through your senior year, you get drafted by the Blue Jays. Given everything you went through with your rehab and everything you used to have to even get to that point, especially when you mentioned that at one point you weren't even sure that you were still going to be able to go pro, and it wasn't even a concern. You just wanted to get back and pitch again. You get that phone call, I'm assuming from your agent, to let you know you got drafted, or the team directly call you. How did that play out?
Yeah, so funny story. I was having conversations with my agent where I was supposed to, well, not supposed to, but projecting to get picked up earlier in the day or earlier in the draft. Things didn't pan out. Teams were kind of worried about my shoulder. Everybody kind of red flagged me. I actually ended up shutting off my phone because I just was over it. I didn't, at that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm just going to go live a normal life. Didn't think I was going to get drafted at that point, because at this point it was like early 20s, and just didn't want to get my hopes up. And I had my hopes up, thought it was going to happen, never did. Turned my phone off, and again, my wife comes into the story again. She turned my phone back on, and I actually went outside to start washing my truck, and she comes running out, and I don't know. I don't even remember the process. I think my agent or somebody called me and said, "Hey, you just got picked up by the Blue Jays." And then you kind of just took it from there between negotiations between them and my agent, and came to an agreement and didn't look back from there.
So you're living, I say down here for us, down here for the audience is South Florida. So you're living down here when that happens, right?
Yep, I was right here in Stewart.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, granted, there's only two teams in the state of Florida anyway. So the odds of you getting drafted by the quote unquote local team wasn't going to be hot. The odds were slim anyway, just the numbers of teams there were. Were there any thoughts about the fact that you were getting drafted by a team in another country, like literally is about as far away from home as you could have possibly been at that point? Or
no, I mean, I didn't really care who picked me up. I just wanted to have an opportunity and kind of see where I could take it. It didn't matter if I had to go Toronto, California. It didn't really matter where. If I could have stayed local, it would have been great. But I just wanted the opportunity at that point.
All right, so we're going to jump a couple years ahead now again. So 2020, I don't think there was any person on this planet who didn't have a rough 2020, obviously, with COVID. Kind of shut the world down. Here in Florida, at least we could get out and do some stuff and outdoor activities. A lot of people couldn't even leave their houses for months at a time. All sports, Major League Baseball included, shuts down. With the way it fell on the schedule, they were shut down in the middle of spring training. They start back up. They play a season. Granted, it's a shortened season, but the minors don't. Minor leagues from AAA all the way down to rookie leagues in the backfields completely shut down. Yep. So you were still obviously in the minors at that time. So what? I guess what was 2020 like for you from the standpoint of is you're just getting ready to leave to head to camp, and then all of a sudden it's okay, nothing's happening now. It's a completely lost year, especially given where you were at your progression when that happened.
Yeah, so I was coming off of a great year in 2019. Pitched really well. Organization was super happy with the way I kind of developed that year. 2020, we actually were in camp, and we were maybe a quarter way through. We just started throwing our lives, and I had a live that day when when COVID kind of broke. Mm-hmm. We kind of heard murmurs about it and weren't really too sure what it would entail. They called us all in and said, "Hey, let's just go home for the rest of the day. We'll kind of reconvene." This was on a Friday, I think. We'll reconvene Monday. Well, it wasn't even maybe 2 hours after they sent us home that said everybody, just go ahead and pack up, go home, stay ready.
This was over you were over.
I was over in Dunedin. Yeah. Yep. They said just go home. So I was just a quick little drive across the state. So I came back and they just told us to kind of stay ready. Just be on standstill. Essentially, they didn't know where or how long or what was going on with COVID at that time. And, obviously we never got the call back to report.
So what type of things did you do during that season? Not just to stay, kind of, mentally sharp, but also physically. Because in your case, being a pitcher, it's not like you could just go over to like a random field and, hit balls to throw balls and hit them to yourself or like whatever. Like you've got to have somebody to throw with. You've obviously got to be able to throw off a mound specifically, not just flat ground. So what types of things did you do to kind of improvise on the fly almost to be able to stay kind of in game shape?
Yes. I mean, it started, obviously we came home and I was obviously fresh out of camp. Didn't know what to expect. So I just kind of stayed throwing. I threw with my brother. I had a buddy that's local here as well. I would pitch to him. I actually built a mound in my backyard. I threw off that for up until just when I got released. Obviously, we'll skip forward to that later. But,
spoiler alert, but yeah.
Yeah, so I just threw in my backyard, and mentally, I just kind of just acted as if I was preparing for spring training maybe a month. I just kept thinking I'd be there in a month. Obviously, it came and went, and they told us that, obviously the season's not going to happen at this point. So at that point, I just shut everything down like a normal season and lived a normal life, lived a normal 2020. I went and worked at a boatyard, did a bunch of boat details. Yeah, it was weird.
So I've seen this mound that you built, but for the audience out there, maybe you can try to explain them a little bit of what exactly it looked like, what you did. Because I thought it was really cool, kind of going on the fly of like, let me recreate the angle and the elevation and everything. So what for the audience, what did you do to kind of recreate that when you say you built a mound in your backyard?
Yeah, so I went on I didn't have access to a mound. I didn't have access to a field, so I went on Google, typed up like a DIY professional mound. After looking at the prices of just buying one, they were absurd. So I was like, yeah, I can just go make this with some lumber, some turf. Went to Home Depot after finding some plans, lined it all up, cut it all out. And my dad, myself, my brother, and my wife put it all together in like one afternoon.
It almost looked like
it was like
a giant cornhole board, but
exactly.
Like much taller and wider and bigger, but like the kind of general shape of it almost. It was like a no, I mean I'm sure that that's probably got to be one of the more creative things that people did, especially ball players probably did as far as because the majors they were playing. So as far as like the minor league guys go, I'm sure you probably had quite the story when you went back about like building your own mound basically in your backyard.
Yeah, I think a lot of guys they built their mounds. They would throw inside into mattresses, you name it. And it was done. Obviously, if there's a will, there's a way. So
2020 goes on. You kind of live that normal non-baseball life for a year. 2021 rolls around. Now we're back into the swing of things. Everything is completely back to normal as far as sports go. There may not be fans in the stands, but everyone's playing full schedules again. I'm sure based off the 2019 season you had, that optimism was still there as far as 2021, as far as, is this going to be the year that I get the call up and whatnot? What was it like returning back to camp, back to the field, back into the swing of things in 2021, as far as the excitement level and you kind of your expectations at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome. Obviously, after taking an entire year off, everybody was coming into camp hot. Everybody was wanting to show off what we were kind of working on that entire year. Everybody was able to kind of work on their craft. Obviously, not having that camaraderie for a year, everybody was coming in guns a-blazing, ready to go. And obviously, building off of 2019, I thought it was going to be a great year. The organization was really kind of excited to see where it would take me that year. And unfortunately for me, it was a year kind of plagued with injury. I was hurt and would try to come back, hurt again, didn't know what it was. And then I ended up missing almost the entire year after missing 2020. So that really kind of screwed up everything as far as my timeline. But
so when that injury happened, then basically, like you just said, 2020 was already a wash for everyone. Now 2021 for you becomes a wash. Kind of going back to where we were earlier, was there a point now in 2021 where it was like, okay, like I got to the pros, I did it. I didn't think I was ever going to get there after what happened in college. I finally made it here. It's just, it just is what it is. And I'll go ahead and say, see you. Or were you determined still to be like, all right, it's just another injury. Let's get through it and get to 2022 at that point?
Yeah. At that point I was still optimistic as far as what I could achieve. I just took the injury with a grain of salt. It's all part of the process. Injuries happen. There was luckily for me, it was nothing serious. Other than obviously missing an entire season, just one thing after another. Coming off an entire year that was missed, there was a lot of injuries, not necessarily with me, just with everybody. A lot of guys were down with just injuries that just wouldn't normally happen in a normal year. Hamstrings,
because they weren't playing for a whole year. They sat basically.
Yeah. I wouldn't say anybody was lazy, but after not competing for an entire year and really kind of ramping up just out of nowhere. I mean, obviously it's planned, you know exactly when the report date is, but I mean, it's different not competing for an entire year.
Yeah, you're not even no matter how hard you train on your own, you can't replicate game speed, you can't
Exactly.
replicate game scenarios. Like
Mhm.
football players even say until they finally put the pads on, it's not really, they can do whatever they want, but until they get those
Exactly.
pads on, it's not really the same.
Exactly.
Um, okay, so now 2021's in the books. You're now healthy again. What was 2022 like now?
Yeah, again, 2022, everybody, you're coming in hot. Everybody's, again, excited for spring training. For me, at that point, I'm kind of one of the more experienced guys, older guys. Had already been up to Double A where I was going. Um, again, really optimistic that they just pretty much just said, you know, you could move quick, just do what you got to do, and we'll kind of see where it goes. And again, didn't go as I planned. You know, obviously at that point, I missed almost 2 full seasons, 2 full years of playing, and kind of just lost throwing into the little strike zone. And obviously, as a pitcher, that's one of your main things. You got to throw strikes. So,
So for us normal people, if we are having a rough patch, whether it's in our jobs and life, we kind of have that opportunity, whether it's maybe we take a couple of days off from work and go get away for a few days if we can afford to do so, or maybe we just take a day and just sit around the house and try to just clear our minds and get everything back to right. As a pitcher, you did have more opportunities for that with off days, but just overall as an athlete, it's not like you can just say, "Hey, I'm going to go on vacation in the middle of the season. See you guys next week." Like, good luck this weekend in the games or whatnot. So when you are experiencing those times where you're truly just struggling and you feel like you can't get out from underneath it, since you can't just say, "All right, I'll see you in a week." What do you do in those instances to try to either keep yourself from getting even more down or to try to keep yourself as level as you can?
yes, I mean, at that point, if you're just having some struggles, you just try to revert back to the basics. Obviously, at one point, it was successful. You got to that point following your routine, following what you just kind of built off of, say, from high school to college to professional baseball. Um, you just go back to your routine, go back to the basics, and really try to, if you're obviously going to your coaches, watching videos, seeing what you can do better. Try to make those little tweaks. You don't want to make anything drastic, and especially in mid-season. Off season you can kind of afford any kind of mechanical changes, but in season it's just trying to compete, trying to throw strikes. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how you do it, as long as you're getting outs, you're getting outs. So yeah, just going back to the basics, going to the throwing some pregame bullpens. Nothing really crazy, obviously just trying to just stay level-headed. It's all part of it. Everybody has failures. Everybody says baseball is a game of failure, so taking each failure with a grain of salt and just kind of pushing through it and just learning from those failures.
You fail 7 out of 10 times as a hitter in baseball and you're in the Hall of Fame. So you think about it that way, you're 300 hitter, that's Hall of Fame right there. So post COVID, I think one of the cooler things for me that the minors did was they gave you guys built-in off days every week. So every week you would have the same. So for you guys, what was it, Mondays, or what day was your off day every week?
To be honest, I don't remember what it was. I think it was Mondays.
But they made the schedule where you got the same off day every week, so you were able to get kind of in a better rhythm and whatnot.
So we had a lot better groove. Obviously, my first couple years in pro ball, we didn't. You might get an off day a month.
Yeah.
Every day you're at the field. There's no breaks. A lot of overnight long bus trips versus that off day was used as a travel day. So we would travel to a place, have a few games, and travel again. Nothing was ever crazy overnight. No super long bus trips. Obviously there was long ones, but it was broken up on an off day. Made it a lot more enjoyable, a lot easier as far as kind of on everybody, driving through the night and having to play that night at your best in front of an audience. It's tough.
So when they changed that schedule up, so then you guys got that same off day every single week. Were there certain things that you like to do on your off days that would like any specific activities or any things that you like to do specifically on your off days to kind of get away from it and kind of just shut down mentally or just kind of relax a little bit, and for those few hours that you did get?
Oh, golf any day of the week. Any chance we got, we were golfing. If it was an off day, even if we had a chance before a game, after a game, if it was an early game, we were golfing.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, I'm a golfer too. It's always good to just get out there. But did that help you specifically? Sometimes if you had like maybe a particularly bad outing and then you got an off day the next day, did that help kind of allow you to reset a little bit, reset your mind for the next game at all? Or
Yeah, of course. Obviously, you're looking for anything you can to kind of get your mind off of that. You don't want to bring the game outside of the game. Just what I try to do is I'd walk through the locker room, get my stuff, shower. Once I walk out, once I'm leaving the field, it's at the field. That was one thing. Going back to my wife again, she really harped on me when I was in college. I'm a perfectionist, and I would always bring things outside of the field. Just thinking about what I could have done better. Obviously after the fact, you're like, why did I throw this pitch? Why did I do that in this situation? But obviously, what happened happened. You can't change it. There's no point of kind of harping on it. Just live with it.
Yeah. You mentioned her too. So obviously, when you're an athlete, a professional athlete, you spend a lot of time on the road, regardless, just even throughout the course of a year. But in your case too, because your wife was down here and your family was all down here, and you were up in the Northeast at the time. Was it tough at all at times? Because even like when you guys were home, you were home, but she was here. Like, I mean, I'm sure even in like the best of playing times, that was probably tough. But was it even tougher on those days when you were just having a really bad day, knowing that like you couldn't just come home to her, that she was down here?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously tough regardless, being away from your family, especially for 6-7 months at a time. But I mean, as far as what being difficult, any more difficult than just kind of an everyday basis, like on a bad day, no, because I would come home and I'd look forward to kind of hopping on FaceTime, kind of talking to her, just to getting away from baseball. She'd always want to like talk about the game, but I was like, let's just not if it was a bad game. But obviously, if it's a good game, everybody wants to talk about it. So just on the bad days, it'd be just less baseball talk, just more like, oh, how was your day? What did I miss, essentially?
So you sort of spoiled a little bit earlier. So towards right around the All-Star break of that 2022 season, you ended up getting that phone call that no professional athlete wants to get. I know it wasn't an actual call. Obviously, you get called into the office, but I guess what was that like when that finally happened?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a buddy right before the All-Star game, or right before our All-Star break. Might have been after. I can't remember the timeline, but he got the cut, and then everybody knew there was things happening, things were moving. It's like, who's next, essentially. Where, like I said before, I was not performing to their standards, especially not my standards. Being a perfectionist, not throwing strikes. I just knew that I was on the chopping block, and at that point, I was the one to go. So they called me in and just said, obviously your performance is kind of dropped off. It's not where we're wanting it. If they could help in any way, they'd be more than willing. But, at the time there was just some moves need to be made, and I was that move. Wasn't shocking. Like I said, I kind of expected it. I knew I was the next. It's just, obviously, like you said, nobody wants to have that call. But at the end of the day, if you're not performing, they got to replace it. Just like any other job, any other kind of workplace, you're not performing, you're gonna get fired. So
you pack up, you come back down here. At that point, is the mentality, okay, what do I do next, or is it, all right, who's going to call me? Like, what team's going to call me next to come in? Like, where was your mindset kind of at that point?
Yes, I mean, when it was obviously mid-season, I really focused on getting back into training. At that point, I was really focused on getting picked back up. I went and trained at a facility up in North Carolina called Tread Athletics. Great facility, great coaches. They've had great success with guys getting picked up. And, I trained with them for, I want to say 2 or 3 months, and then just realized my heart wasn't in it anymore. And I just did not feel like missing out at home. We have, at that point, a 2-year-old or almost 2-year-old. And I just didn't want to miss any more, and just any more time in general. Obviously, being away from home for 6 to 7 months, I just decided it wasn't for me. And I just had to just call it quits as far as training wise.
Did you have teams reach out to you before that? What would have been 23 spring training?
No teams, because like I said, when I decided to stop, I was still super early. Like I want to say the 2022 season was still going on.
Okay.
So I never really got to the point as far as teams looking out. Obviously, my agent was in contact with teams, and teams were eager to kind of see what was, if any kind of progress was made or any kind of interest that would be had. But obviously, I didn't make it towards spring training when teams are picking up, subtracting.
So when you made that decision that you were done, that you were hanging them up, so to say, had you, prior to making that decision, had you given any thought yet to what you wanted to do next with your life as far as like career path, or was it just kind of like, I'll figure it out as I go?
At that point, I was just kind of figure out as I go. I just knew that baseball wasn't for me anymore. I just wanted to stay home and be with family. So at that point, there was no thought as to far what I would do. I just kind of figure out on my own. Really took me about a year to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. Maybe a little less than a year, but yeah.
And for I know this, sorry, but for the audience at home, what are you doing now?
So after thinking about it for a year, I had a couple little things that I started. I started a pool company, realized that wasn't for me either. So in July, I started in pilot school. I was in the back of my mind, told myself if I wasn't playing baseball, I'd be a pilot, and started that, and here I am.
So pretty much, I mean, your entire life almost, at least through high school, college, and the pros, you had a very regimented schedule as far as being a baseball player. You work out at this time, you report to the field at this time, first pitches at this time, and whatnot. And so now, now you're not playing anymore. I mean, obviously, we all still have very structured lives, but you don't quite have that same structure anymore. So, what has that adjustment been like to being able to kind of have more freedom when it comes to like just going about your daily life now?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out like a routine. Some days I get up super early, go down to pilot school. Some days I don't have anything to do. So I work out just kind of whenever. I don't have a set schedule, which is nice. I've always, like you said, I've always had a set, like kind of regimen. Very structured, more so in college than it was pro ball. But obviously, then you have times to work out, first pitch. Times you want to be out at the field. Yeah, so at this point, I'm really kind of just enjoying not having a schedule. Obviously, once I get to an airliner, so to speak, I'll have more of a schedule then. But right now, it's just enjoying it.
I don't know if regret's necessarily the right word, but do you ever have days where you wake up and wonder, like, did I give it up too soon?
No, never. Yeah. I knew at that point, the decision I wanted and the decision I made was for good. I never look back on what I could have done or what should have done. I know the grass isn't always greener. So
has your sense of identity or sense of purpose kind of changed at all now that you're not playing baseball anymore? Because like, when you're a baseball player, I mean, yeah, there's more to your life, but you're a baseball player. So like, do you, how has that mindset kind of changed now?
For me, there hasn't really been much of a mindset change. Like I said, I try to keep everything super easy going. I don't try to change what I am on and off the field. Obviously, playing baseball, you show up for a crowd, you're playing for people. But I mean, self identity, really, no. I mean, I'm just doing what I can to support my family and I guess, just to make my kids proud later on.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say, based off this entire interview, and this is kind of last question, you've done a really good job in your life being able to properly keep everything into perspective and balance everything. I don't want to say you're the exception, but I think that it's safe to say that for a lot of athletes, they aren't able to do that quite as well, and they end up not being able to find that proper balance. Whether it's something that you found worked well for you or just maybe a piece of advice, what would you say to somebody listening to this that either is a athlete themselves or has an athlete in their family that maybe you'd recommend as far as a good way to keep everything kind of balanced and in perspective, so to say?
Yeah, I mean, the way I looked at it is, just at the end of the day, you're getting paid to play a game. It's fun. Have fun. It's, you don't have to go to a cubicle. You don't have to go to an office. You're not only kind of reporting to yourself. Obviously you have teammates, you have coaches, but at the end of the day, you're getting paid to play a game. Just have fun with it. Just take every day as its own. Don't let things spiral. Just my coaches always said 1 pitch at a time. Don't let things spiral. Just whatever happens. You can't change it. So just kind of keep moving forward. Keep trucking.
Love it. All right. Well, Cre, thanks so much for coming in today, sitting down with me, doing a little in-person interview. It was awesome. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks. All right. That'll do it for today's show. Thank you so much again to Cre for joining me. I thoroughly enjoyed that conversation. It was great to get that kind of inside look into the mind of an athlete directly instead of just talking about them with a bunch of other people. So I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. And if you did, please continue to show your love for not just that conversation, but our show as a whole by continuing to like, subscribe, rate, review, continuing to share, continuing to get the word out about the Victory Over Vices podcast and everything we are doing over here. And of course, like I do at the end of every show, I like to remind everyone that if you are a loved one is struggling, it is okay not to be okay, but also it is okay to go get the help and support you need, whether that be through mental support, substance abuse support, or both at the same time. So addictionhelp.com is a great website to get all the information that you may need, whether you are looking to get the process started for getting the help that you need, whether you want to get more information to help your loved one get the help they need, or you just kind of want to understand more about what your loved one or yourself may be going through. Addictionhelp.com has great resource pages as well as great information when it comes to getting the help that you need so that you can go on and live healthy and healthy life, because that's what it's all about over here. Is we want everyone to enjoy their lives. We want everyone to be happy and healthy. And so that will do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much to everyone for joining me today. We will talk to you next time. Have a good one, everybody.